Introducing Minor Wisdom Quintet.
1, 2, a skidda-didda-doo.
Minor Wisdom.
Well, this week on the Minor Wisdom podcast, I've got Kaylin Hocker, formerly known as Childress, recently got married. I guess not that recently, maybe a year or so, but Kaylin is one of the leads over at TXCTA in charge of K-12, and they just made a big announcement this week. So Summerfest is live and in person. So Summerfest is in July, and it is in Plano. Thank you, Plano, for hosting that. I know it's going to be hopefully off the Chisane, because it's going to be one of the first times that teachers are getting together for an extended period of time. Now, teachers will be able to get together before that if you take advantage of the Thespian Summer PD. So here I am hustling two things, neither of which benefit me at all, but both are very important to Texas theater education. And so we've got Texas Thespians, which I'm helping out a lot with that. Mandy Tapia is the lead on that, and taking that professional development bull by the horns, if you will. And she is doing a really good job of putting that stuff together. There are going to be 3 dates for that, and those have already been announced. But June 26th is the first one in Houston, Texas. Actually, I joke, it's not even in Houston, it's in Atascocita, which I told Mandy from my house, Atascocita is just a little less of a drive than the Bastrop PD, which is going to be at the end of July. So, I'll be at both, but I just think it's kind of funny that we say the Houston one is, Atascocita, which if you're from Houston, you don't go to Atascocita unless you have a full day planned in Atascocita. And if you're in Austin, you don't really go to Bastrop unless you have a full day to go to Bastrop. But not really, I'm exaggerating. But my point is there are going to be a lot of opportunities for theater teachers to get enriched and professionally developed this summer. And it'll be good. A lot of it's face-to-face. Protocols will be followed, I'm assuming, I'm hoping, I think. I don't know. I haven't actually read that. So, but if you're not comfortable doing it, I don't know about Summerfest. I didn't read up a lot on Summerfest, but I know for Texas Thespians, if you're not comfortable being in person, there is an online option. And that's part of where I come in with that, because I'm setting up the portion of trying to get you on Zoom and get you piped in so that you can also be a part of the sessions just as much as the face-to-face folks. So Summerfest, good thing with TXCTA. I'm excited. I was excited to talk to Kaylin. I've wanted to get Kaylin on for a while. I know I say that a lot, and maybe it's true a lot, but it's definitely true here. And so it was nice to get her on. I did have her on in spring break, during spring break. So this interview is almost a month old, if not a month old now. And so some of the stuff she mentions right off the top, very sentimental portion about her grandmother, that was really fresh for her. So, I appreciate her mentioning that and saying something. And, all obviously at that time and even now, grieving is grieving. You don't put a timeline on grieving. I'm still grieving my parents, and it's been 15 years, but obviously in different ways. But so, everybody's thoughts and prayers, especially during this very trying and sensitive time of the coronavirus and the COVID era, go out to Kaylin and her family. But it was a fun interview, and getting to know her and just her story. And, she's, again, one of the faces that you see at these events, because she is very active, rightfully so. She should be. She's motivated. She's driven. She's got a fire. Speaking of fires, no, not speaking of fires. That's a horrible transition. But I'm going to be having a big change in my life very soon. The people that need to know now, but you can probably figure out what it is. But I'm not going to officially make any announcement yet. But there were some changes made this week, and I have not been this excited about something in 11 years, is what I told my wife. I think it's been 11 years since I've had this feeling about something. And so, yes, you're probably putting some thoughts together, if you will, if you're a listener of this podcast. But enough about me. Make sure, again, you leave a 5-star review wherever you listen. I'm assuming a lot of you are Spotifyers or iTuners, mostly iTuners, but leave a 5-star review, leave a comment, leave something, friend me on Facebook, follow me on Twitter at Mr. Blake Miner. I look forward to hearing from you all, especially this week, because we've got state qualifiers. We're officially headed that direction now, and next week's episode, I will have quite a few state qualifiers. I've lined up quite a few of those interviews, those short, quick ones that I did 2 years ago. Didn't do it last year because, well, we didn't do state, but enjoyed this week's interview with Miss Kaylin Hocker.
So I grew up in a teeny tiny little town in East Texas that had no semblance of theater whatsoever. And I got the bug because I was in third grade, and I got a part in the Christmas play, and I got the lead over all the fifth graders. And so I was pretty impressed with myself. And I really just kind of started really enjoying it and thought, man, I'd really like to do this. And my grandmother, it's kind of a sweet story. My grandmother took me to see Ramona Quimby, age 8, at the Texarkana College. And she just passed 2 weeks ago from COVID. And so it was really a sweet memory to think about, like the fact that she kind of set me on my trajectory a little bit, like by taking me to my first play. And I have distinct memories of that. And so then my family moved to Hempstead when I was going to start middle school. And I was so excited because I felt like it was a big city, which now, I mean, I am fully aware Hempstead is anything but a big city. But compared to where I lived, it was huge. And they had theater in school. And I was so excited. And so I took theater. And then all my friends were taking band. For some reason, band was like the cool thing to do at the time, which is counterintuitive, but it was. And so I actually ended up quitting theater and joining band. And for a long time thought that I fell in love with music too. And so for a long time, I really thought I was going to be a band director. Praise Jesus that was not the path my life took, because that's not where I needed to be. But freshman year, kind of got back into theater a little bit, but I'm not going to lie. I had an attitude. I was one of those kids that, like, you kind of want in your program because they've got some talent and they're hard workers, but also they've got an attitude and you don't really know what to do with them. I had a little bit of an attitude, and I am a proud Mark Piquel student. And we butted heads a little bit, but in a great way. We're great now. But so I actually ended up not doing theater for the rest of my freshman year and my sophomore year, and got back into it my junior year, which was my junior year and senior year. We went to state and one night play. And I was completely hooked at that point, still kind of thinking that maybe I was going to do music. But I was pretty sold on doing it. And so it was coming from that experience as a student gives me a lot of insight into my students. I mean, there's plenty of directors who did one night play, as high schoolers, but, yeah, I'm really, really, really grateful. But I will also say that it was a little difficult for me because in high school only did one night play my junior and senior year, and we went to state both years. So I didn't know how to lose until I became a director myself. And then I lost a lot, but I got very good at it. So it was good. Went off to college, studied theater, did the typical thing where I decided that I needed to go act first or I would regret, not taking that chance. And so I started saving up to move to New York. There were a few little jobs in there in between, on the side kind of stuff, but started saving up to move to New York because I was fully convinced that was what I needed to do. And which I now know is fully illegal within the UIL system. My sister's school, their director got pneumonia. Like, she was like sick. And they were like, can you come run a rehearsal? And I was like, sure. I had no idea that wasn't not kosher, but whatever. So I went up, played some improv games, started working some scenes with these kids, and halfway through that rehearsal, I looked around and I was like, "Oh, what am I doing? I don't want to go to New York. This is what I want to be doing. This is exactly what I want to be doing." And I had a friend, we were planning on moving together. And so that night it went from, well, maybe if we can't get it all together and make it happen by December, then maybe I'll look at getting my teaching certification instead. And within 24 hours, it went from that to, how do I tell Catherine I'm not moving to New York with her? I mean, I was done. Like I looked into teaching certification programs the next day. Like I was hooked. There was no question in my mind that that was what I wanted to be doing. And so then, thanks to some connections and a lot of luck, I ended up teaching at Waco High. I was there for 7 years. We we had a blast. We created a really fun little program, a little great little department, and did some big musicals and won some awards. Had very little one act play success. Very little. Made it to area once, by district once or twice. I don't know. Like it was. We were not a one act play school by any stretch of the imagination. Um, but I got to a point where I realized that I was pouring everything into my career and I was not taking care of myself personally. My health, my mental health, my social circles were only my theater. I mean, I had theater friends, but like I spent so much time working on shows, being at the school, that I had no social life. And I realized I had kind of worked myself into a corner in Waco. And I was one act play director, speech and debate coach, and UIL academic coordinator. And it was going to be very difficult for me to take a step back from any of those things. And I just realized it was time for a big change. I needed a big change. And so I realized I wanted to do something else. And so I ended up in Houston at Jersey Village and started really prioritizing my health and my well-being. Um, my program looks entirely different than it did in Waco as far as my time commitment to it. But the fun thing is we've had some success, like it's not even, it doesn't always have to be, you put in 1,000,000 hours a week and that's what makes you successful. Sometimes stepping back and having a little more balanced approach, you know, can make for a better program. It makes me a better director. I know that for sure. And so that's been a really fun process. And so um, finding that has been probably the biggest accomplishment of my career recently. But through all that, I got involved with TXCTA. I served as the high school interest chair on the K-12 committee, and now I'm serving as the chair for the K-12 committee. Served 2 years as chair elect, and so I'm in the middle of that and serving on the board now. And so this is my 10th year of teaching, which feels insane, but it's been a good 10 years.
Yeah, 10 consecutive, right?
Yeah.
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 So when did you get involved with TXCTA?
So I remember when I was in high school, we actually helped, Mark led a workshop and we came and did some scenes for that. So that was my first introduction to it. I remember sitting in Houston at the hotel there and looking around and just thinking, I want to do this someday. I want to be back here someday. And so my first year, thankfully, Waco ISD was really, really good about making sure that we had what we needed as far as professional development goes. So they always covered our Theater Fest registrations, Summer Fest registrations, all that, lodging and everything. And so they were great about that. So my very first year, all 10 years, I've been a TXCTA member, Theater Fest attendee, workshop presenter, and all that. So I guess probably 3 or 4 years into probably 3 years into teaching, I presented at Summerfest for the first time. Had a really good time. Actually, that might have just been my second year of teaching, and then I was kind of hooked. Just kind of kept doing it and kept pushing myself in there until somebody let me get involved. So
it always blows my mind. You said something real quick there that Waco was real good about funding pretty much your
Mhm.
PD. It
Yeah.
always, I've talked to a number of teachers where that is not the case, and
Oh,
it always blows my mind that a district is like, nah, we're good with where you're at.
yeah.
We don't want you to get smarter.
That if I could change one thing about most districts, like
Yeah,
that's a lot. And Sci-Fair has been really good. They provide where they can. With 12 schools, it's a lot different.
right.
12 high schools, it's a
Much
lot different
bigger,
than
right?
having two high schools, like Waco had. But they are certain. They certainly help out and cover. This year, they were covering, or this past year,
Right,
USITT
right.
for a staff member. Like they definitely help out in the ways that they can. But yeah, Waco was a wonderful experience as far as having support. I got to work with Larry Carpenter
Yeah,
there, with Philip Morgan, both of whom, in very different ways, are huge advocates, for their theater programs and for getting us what we needed. We also had a school board at the time, and obviously I'm not there anymore, so I can't speak for the board there now. But at the time, our school board was so invested in making sure that the arts thrived in Waco ISD, and we were able to put on enormous musical productions
yeah,
that I can't even fathom putting on now because I just would never have the budget for
right.
it. But we did a production of Tarzan with aerial silks, and we had, I mean, we literally had a jungle on stage of live plants, fresh plants, and then like all this, like this beautiful set. I was working with Corey Garrett at the time, who was our tech director, and we just had so much fun creating some really beautiful works of art with some really great backing from our administration.
So you did Tarzan, huh?
We did. It is literally like, number one, the book of that show is not great. The music, I mean, it's Phil Collins, so it's
Yeah,
amazing.
yeah.
Like it's that. I love that meme that's like, Phil Collins did not have to go this hard for us on the Tarzan soundtrack, but he did. He did that. It was such a wonderful experience. We
Yeah.
had so much fun. The kids took so much ownership and like just dove
Yeah.
in. It is. I look back at those pictures. I don't think I'll ever look back at the pictures of that production and not just beam
Yeah.
with pride. Like
Yeah.
I loved it.
One of the prettiest shows I've ever done is Tarzan. That's why I bring it up. But also one of the worst memories I have in theaters from Tarzan, because we did it at the Woodlands High School, and it was a whole thing. I'm not going to get into all of the other stuff that has to do with why maybe some people lost their jobs, but that people can research that stuff. But uh, the kid playing Tarzan looked like Tarzan, but did not sound like Tarzan at all. And so we ended up recording his tracks and
Gosh.
auto-tuning his tracks and just giving him all kinds of assistance. And he lip-synced the whole show, whereas everybody else was live.
Yeah, our Tarzan, he was a good singer, but it was a little out of his range,
Yeah,
and
it's a tough.
and he was young.
Yeah,
He was a sophomore, I think, at the time, I think he was only a sophomore.
yeah,
And yeah, it was well, but he worked so hard and was such a good leader for the group.
yeah.
You want to talk about people almost losing their jobs? I look back at that video and I'm like, did I literally let two students, one of whom was the son of the president of the school
They're like
board,
half naked.
do death drops from
Oh.
aerial silks on stage? Death drops.
Yeah.
Like, really, what the miracle that is the fact that no one got hurt in that production, because we had no injuries whatsoever, none. I can't explain it.
Well, not on your part, but as far as the people watching it, ignorance is bliss. So,
Absolutely.
they probably had no idea.
Absolutely.
They were like, "Oh, we trust her. She's going to."
Absolutely. We had so much fun too. Like, we had our Tarzan swing out over the audience.
That's
Like,
fun.
it was a blast.
Yeah.
It was so fun.
It's a good show, but anyway, that's not why we're here. So another thing we have in common is I also got my start, or the bug bit me, in a Christmas play, and I'm Jewish, so it must have been a hell of a Christmas play. So yeah, but that's all. That's all I had to say. I do want to ask you this. This is, again, I said right before we started recording, my mind may take us onto a tangent of cheese or something, but so you said Hempstead, and
Yes.
and so I'm an '80s baby. Grew up with the Houston Oilers, and
Yeah.
so I think of Hempstead, I think of Ray Childress. Okay,
Yes.
and your last name is now Childress.
No, my last name was
Oh,
Childress.
excuse me, was Childress. Excuse me. Now
Hocker.
it's
Yeah. No.
Hocker. It is are you? Is there?
No, I'm
Dang,
not related,
damn it.
but so Ray Childress bought Lawrence
Yes.
Marshall car dealership
Yeah. Yeah.
there and have said, and we used to joke that like when I graduated from high school, I needed to send him a graduation announcement and he would just be
Yeah.
like, oh, it's some cousin I have. I'll just send some
Yeah.
money or something. We didn't actually do it, but
Oh.
no. And then when that all went down and he kind of abandoned Lawrence Marshall and it was a bad deal, I was like, I don't want to be connected to
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
at all,
It
but
didn't end
no,
well.
no, no relation that we
Okay.
know of, I guess.
Yeah. Well, maybe have you ever done 23andMe?
My dad has.
Oh
Yeah, I don't
well.
think he found anything
Okay. Never
connecting
mind.
there. So
Well, I
yeah.
thought you were related to a Hall of Famer, but I guess not. Uh, so now getting onto the more serious stuff. So you have. It sounds like you've kind of adopted the smarter versus harder philosophy as a director and educator.
Yeah.
Um, do we're the same way where I am now, and I've always kind of been that philosophy where if we don't need to rehearse for 12 hours on a Saturday, we're not going to, because Saturdays are kind of my time.
Yeah.
uh you want to speak on that? I see you
Yeah.
starting to think
I
about it.
was giving almost every Saturday up during the run of a show.
Yeah.
When I was in Waco. I mean, we literally and we had fun. Don't get me wrong. We had a blast. For the season of life that I was in, it was great. It was fine. I just reached a point where I realized I couldn't maintain that pace. There was no way I could keep that up. And if I tried to, I was going to run myself into the ground.
Yeah.
And so I really looked at, and I'm not saying that this is what everyone needs to do, but for me, it was entirely necessary for me to just take a step back and like move somewhere else completely and start over fresh. And I I looked at that as an opportunity to say, I am going to set my pace at one that I can maintain. And we're just going to see what happens.
Yeah.
And that has to be good enough. Because at the end of the day, as much as I love teaching theater, as much as I love directing shows and creating art with students, it is not my entire life.
Right.
And I have to prioritize my health and well being and now my family's health and well being over that. And so when I got to Jersey Village, I was really grateful that it was a program. They did not do Saturday rehearsals. They
Yeah.
were not used to that at all. And so I was like, okay, well, we're not going to do them then. We'll do one a run or something like that. When we absolutely have to, maximum two. But we were, like I said, we were doing every Saturday almost in Waco. They were not used to. The day was certainly earlier. Because school ended up so much earlier, but they were not used to rehearsing past 6 o'clock, 5, 6 o'clock.
Right.
And I'm used to I would be at the school till 9. And so it really kind of forced me to say, I'm not going to come in and completely change how this program's been operating. And this is a nice pace so far, it just facility wise and program wise, we don't have a huge collaboration with our music program. So our musicals have to be a little bit smaller and our space just doesn't lend itself towards a gigantic musical. Right. So we do the one act musicals or we do juniors and make them more children's theater, focus in on that a little bit more, which has just been, I love directing musicals, but it has been really nice to be able to focus in on 40 minutes to an hour of a musical versus a 2.5 hour production where you're trying to get everything done.
Yeah. And there's a huge place for that. I mean, growing up right out of high school, I was a resident designer at Main Street Youth Theater, and I knew nothing about youth theater until I was there. And, there's some directors out there that believe we got to challenge these kids, and the challenge is within how you work with them, not necessarily with the show.
I could not agree with that more. And I am a TYA, Theater for Young Audiences, that is a passion of mine. If I could, if I won the lottery today, I probably would stop teaching, not because I don't love it, but I would open a Theater for Young Audiences.
Right. It's similar to what Tress Curzon did when she moved to Illinois.
Yeah. So the first one act that we did at Jersey Village when I got there is called Where Words Once Were by Finnegan Kruckmeyer. And it is a TYA piece.
What? By who?
Yes. Finnegan Kruckmeyer. Okay. He's in Australia. I can't remember if he's Australian. Okay. I want to say he's he's not, but a delight of a human being to work with.
Okay.
Absolutely delightful. And I fell in love with this script a few years before and wanted to do it in Waco, and it just didn't work with the kids that we had. And so I was really grateful that it didn't, and that I saved it, because I just had a perfect group for it when I got to JV. And we had so much fun creating that piece and creating, I mean, I think there's a decent chance you wouldn't even realize it was a TYA piece.
Right.
But it's perfect for that. And so I think that there's a lot to be said for meeting students where they are. There are some directors that push students big time with the content. Nothing against them. That's not my style. That's not what I'm going to do. But I love having these students dive into the text, dive into how can we create this story that may be geared toward, someone in a younger age range, but how can we create art out of it that's going to resonate with everyone?
Finnegan is Irish, which is apropos since we're recording this on St. Patrick's Day.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and he now lives in Tasmania.
Yeah.
So, wow, he's we're literally the same age. Anyway,
he's fantastic, and he has some everyone go look him up right now, because he has some scripts that are incredible. I told him, I was like, please let me workshop some of your new works. Please send them to us. Like, let us do it, because I adore him and his work.
He kind of looks like, oh my gosh, why am I blanking? I'll think of it in a second. But Sweet Transvestite, why am I blanking? He looks.
Oh, well, if you hadn't said that,
I shouldn't have
I
said
could have
that.
named it in a heartbeat.
Oh man, that's so horrible. I'll think of it in a second. Or just look it up. So you, with the Smarter Not Harder thing, Tim Curry, thank you.
There you go.
Yeah. I needed Google. I couldn't. Anyway, he looks like young Tim Curry.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
But with the Smarter versus Harder thing, going with the OAP side of stuff, OAP's, that's a Texas thing. We love it here, we hate it here, whatever you want. It's very bipolar.
How many ever times you've advanced and how you feel about it at the moment?
Yeah. Well, yes, I'm starting to. So you say that, and I'm not meaning to change
jokingly
subject.
say that.
Yeah, no. I know you jokingly say that, but like this year especially, I had advanced to region twice, but it wasn't my show. It was Pam Wilson's show. So I was just there for the ride. I was literally on the bus, as impactful as the actors, if not less. But this year, I'm at a school where they haven't advanced out of zone in years, and they finally advanced out of just zone. And so these kids blew up as though they had won state. And so I see the benefit in it. I understand the importance of it. I understand how it affects different organizations compared to others, and different, not organizations, schools. I don't know why I'm speaking like it's a business term. But I'll let you speak on this first before I say anything, unless you're just completely wrong. But do you think, do you think no, or very little success is okay as far as one act play is concerned? Do you think it's okay for you as a director, as Kaylin, that when you if you ever go into another interview and say, I haven't had the best luck with one act play, but that doesn't define me as a director. Do you feel that?
Well, I kind of did do that when I came to Jersey Village.
Sure.
When I was interviewing with Cy-Fair, I had to say, we got to buy district a couple times. My second year directing, we got to area, but never again.
Right.
And we still created good work. That wasn't the question. We were in a district with Temple and College Station and all these schools that advance all the time, and so it was always a question mark for us. It never felt like a done deal, and it never should, but I think that, yes, it is okay to not have all that much success. I think you still need to have something to show for your career, and so like being able to say, "Here's what I've accomplished," like that's huge. I mean, I do think that in some school districts, no, it might not be okay, because I've heard about so many school districts this year alone that were doing things like not wanting their students to wear masks because they worried that it was going to impact whether or not they
Right.
advanced. And that mentality, unless you're going in and you've gone to state 8 times, like yes, you're probably going to struggle getting that job.
Right.
But then you have to question if that's a job you want or not,
Right.
right? I was grateful coming into JV. They had not gotten out of zone in at least like 4 years.
Yeah.
I'm going to say 4, maybe 5. I can't quite remember. Hadn't gotten to area in 12 years. Hadn't advanced 3 times that we know of ever. And that first year that I was there, we got to area. We were alternate to region. Like
Yeah.
that felt huge. And it was to some extent a big deal, just in the competitive side of things, but also for my students. It gave them a lot of buy-in, and it was super helpful, as I'm stepping in and I'm starting to lead this program, taking over for someone who was there for literally 20
Yeah. A long
20
time.
something
Yeah.
years. I can't remember. I'm going to say the wrong number now,
Yeah.
but she was there for forever. And so to say, "Hey, here I am,
Yeah.
like I'm going to lead you now." Having that success really helped, but it really was way more about the camaraderie that we created, the community that we created through that process. Our show changed and grew with every level, and just teaching them to seek that excellence. Not, and when I say excellence, I don't mean in a judge's eyes. I mean like in perfecting their craft, in honing their craft, in creating, finding new ways to tell the story. That was what was crucial for us. And then last year we advanced twice and then got shut down, and then this year we didn't get out of district,
Right.
like it happens. I think that the nice thing is I have reached a point in my career as a director where I can look at my show this year, for instance, in a year where we didn't advance, and I can say, our show was good.
Yeah.
Now, was it good enough to beat out 3 other schools that were going to advance? Maybe not.
Yeah.
Maybe it wasn't. Maybe it wasn't the year. Maybe they had stellar years. I mean, there was a school in our district who hasn't advanced in a super long time that, from all accounts, I mean, I didn't get to see the show, but from everything I heard, their show was incredible. And so, like, how can I be upset about that? Like,
Yeah.
congratulations to them. That's amazing. Fantastic that they had a good show this year. And maybe we're kind of the dark horse that, came in from behind that we weren't expecting, but I have a different confidence now that I did not have in my early years of directing, where I can say our show was good.
Yeah.
And we did what we needed to do. And this is what I always tell my students: if you go out on stage and you leave it all on the stage and you do everything you're supposed to do, you can't have regrets.
Right.
Because then it's out of your control past that point. And I'm glad that I can look at this now and say that's not just something empty that I say to them. I really genuinely feel that way.
Yeah.
We did what we
Yeah.
could do. We put on a show that we had so much fun creating. We worked the moments that we needed to work. Did it have room to grow? Absolutely. I'm not saying it was a perfect show by any stretch of the imagination. But I don't have any regrets about where it was when we took it to district, and it didn't advance.
Right.
And that just is what it is. And so honestly, like, was it a bummer? Yes. Was I a little upset at first? Sure. Cause that's just how it goes. But in the days that followed, I just kind of realized that here we are. Like, we did a good show.
Yeah.
And
Good.
that's what matters at the end of the day. And so I'm grateful to be in that mindset
Yeah.
now. Early director, Kaylin, not so much. No, that was a beat yourself up for weeks and
Yeah.
wonder why you didn't do everything you could have when you totally did. But
So completely switching gears again. I have been Facebook friends with you now for years, for quite
Yeah.
some time. And so I've enjoyed watching your journey from being a single female to meeting your now husband, marrying him, and just
Yes.
the joy that you kind of, a lot of people say all the positive stuff's on Facebook. Nobody ever posts anything, about their negative side of things,
Right.
Which could be the case. Although I try very hard to post some negative stuff,
Sure. Sure.
just for those naysayers. But it has been a joy to watch you just go through this kind of relationship journey with him.
Yeah.
And I'm sure it's been fun for you, I'm assuming.
Oh,
Yeah.
a
Okay,
blast, a
good.
blast. Well, even before meeting him, so Katie Cross, who has been
Yeah.
on the pod,
Yeah.
um,
I don't know
she and
why
I
you're
were
pointing
roommates.
down. I don't know what that means, but
Pointing on the pod, the computer,
okay.
She and I were roommates when I first moved here, and we had a blast. Oh my gosh, we had so much fun living together as two, 30 flirty and thriving girls, or as I used to say, 30 awkward and surviving.
Yeah, that's
And
good.
I decided my New Year's resolution for 2019 was going to be that I was going to go on 19 dates. It could be with the same person. Like I wasn't
Right.
saying 19 different guys, like it could be with the same person, but 19 dates in 2019, just to put myself out there. Because like I said, in Waco,
Balls.
I had really put my personal life on the back burner, and it was not something that I focused on at all. So when I moved to Houston, I was like, all right, let's do this dating app thing. And dating apps are the best and the worst.
Yeah.
They're the absolute worst. But I was having fun with it. And so I just got so tickled at some of the profiles that I saw, not to like mock these guys or anything like that, but just seeing some of the things. And I was like, you know what? If I'm going to enjoy this, other people are too. And so I just started sharing some of my favorite things that I would come across. And there were some real winners, some real winners. And people enjoy laughing, and I still enjoy, like, I love when people post stuff now, because now I'm an old married woman, so I'm not on the apps anymore, but I
Experienced
do
married
still
woman.
love it,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
it's just such a wild west of relationships, and it is hilarious if you let it be. It can be stressful, but I really just had a lot of fun with it. And so Greg was date number 8 through the rest of them, and we met on Bumble, and so we did the whole chatting online thing, and yeah,
What?
it was a
So,
blast.
did you grow up in the AOL? You grew up in the AOL
Oh
kind of.
yeah.
Is it any? Because I didn't do online dating. I don't know if fortunate
uh,
is the right word. I don't think that's the right word, but
no,
met
it
my
is
wife when I
fortunate
was
is,
in 2006. So
yeah,
it was kind
yeah.
of before that blow up, but was it like that? Like, did you go
It,
ASL?
yeah, that's what I was about to say. There wasn't any like ASL, because you had that already on your profile.
Right.
But no, yeah, it definitely could remind you of like being in chat rooms and like finding people to instant
It was
message
the
and all
worst
that fun
time
stuff.
ever for me.
Yeah, I mean, the nice thing is, you would have, we laughed at the guys who just wanted to stay on the app and text for 4 days or
Right.
5 days. Like Greg and I talked on the app for like, I don't know, an hour, and then moved to text messaging,
Right.
Um, but you have your like serial texters that don't really want to actually have conversations or go on dates. They just want to text for days on days on
Right.
days. So
Creeps.
that was always a
Yeah.
fun thing. But yeah, it's
What does he do?
so he was in oil and gas
Okay.
pre-COVID. So
Gotcha.
he was mid career change at
Okay.
this point. So
Okay.
yeah, we're figuring that landscape out. I say career change, if oil and gas comes rolling
Right.
back, then
Does he does
going
he
back.
understand your world, or are you teaching him?
Okay, so yes and no.
Okay.
He has always been. He was raised by a mother who loves the arts. Like at Thanksgiving, we sat and she told me all about how she wanted to. When she was in New York last time, she just so wanted to go see Hedwig and the Angry Inch. My gosh, that's
What
amazing.
a
But
weird
she saw
one to
Kinky
see.
Boots and she
Yeah. Yeah.
loved it,
Yeah.
loved it. And so he grew up, going to the theater, going to the ballet, going to the opera, museums, all that. So he's very arts centered and driven. So he loves theater, but he did not understand this one act play world in the slightest. And so last year he got a taste of it,
Right.
and he drank the Kool-Aid. He was all in. And so this year he was all about it. So
Is he
yeah, he's a
competitive?
real, oh,
Okay.
yes,
So that's probably why.
very competitive.
Yeah.
So yeah, he's a very good one act play husband. And so
That's
yeah,
good. Well, good. Yeah, because some people are talk about their spouses just kind of understanding that you're going to be absent from the house for a little bit, but not
yeah.
really buying into it. Yeah.
No, and that's what I always said, was I didn't have to have someone who loved theater. I just needed someone who loved that I loved it. And that was very evident with Greg. In fact, I mean, when he proposed, he got my one act play company on Zoom They totally psyched me out. I thought that we were just having like a buy thing for the seniors, like that they arranged. So I like logged on, whatever. We were at my parents' house. I logged on. I'm like talking to them, and all of a sudden he logs on to the Zoom, and I was like, "What are you doing? Wait, what are you doing? How did you get this link? What are you doing on here?" And so all of them were on Zoom and got to watch him propose, and it was precious.
That's cool.
It was perfect. And what I loved so much was that he recognized how much I love my students
Right.
and that I would want them to be a part of that. And he loved that.
That's
And
really
so,
cool.
yeah,
Wow, I want to marry Greg.
you should. Everyone should. He's great.
So, all right, switching gears again, change your cap. Okay. A TXETA.
Yeah.
So talk about your role. And I want you to also talk about where you kind of see things for you heading in the future. And I don't mean career path. I mean like where you see the K through 12 side of things for TXETA going. Because I know there's discussion of all kinds of things with TXETA, with thespians, with TTAL, with everybody's got the up and up going. You know, everybody's looking forward, not backward. And so, what is it from your perspective that you want to see kind of happen, and kind of just your excitement and your passion behind it?
Yeah. So like I said, I'm the chair of the K-12 committee, and I oversee our committee that's made up of our interest chairs and at-large members for the K-12 section of TXCTA, which is 80% of the organization. And so our primary function obviously is to represent, the K-12 sector to the board, the needs, concerns, desires of that group, but also to put on Summerfest, the summer workshops that we hold for the K-12 section. Last year, unfortunately, we had to cancel Summerfest because of COVID. And so this year, we are still in a holding pattern right now, trying to figure out exactly what that's going to look like, trying to see if there's any possible way that we can hold an in-person event, just kind of waiting to see a little bit more like how this vaccine rollout stuff goes and how, like, where we're at, where numbers are at. So it's going to be a little bit of a race to the finish line to figure out, once we figure out if it's going to be a virtual situation or an in-person. What we are committed to this year is making sure that it is not just regardless of however it goes, we don't want it to just be a sit in front of your Zoom again, for hours on end, because we know everybody's zoomed out, and it's a real thing. And so we're excited about, kind of reevaluate, like taking this opportunity. I mean, everybody, the arts community, any organization involved in the arts, even organizations not in the arts, like everyone's having to kind of reevaluate everything in light of this unprecedented time.
Unprecedented.
So tired of that term. And so we're kind of excited about like being able to kind of reevaluate like what is important about Summerfest. We know some of those things. We know that a lot of people love the camaraderie that they get to experience there, and the fellowship with other theater teachers, like that's huge. And then what maybe has just kind of been something we've been doing for years on end, and so we still do it. Like what are those things? So we're looking at all of those things, trying to figure that out. And, next year when we obviously will probably, more than likely we'll be able to do an in-person situation. What does it look like then? When it's 100%.
You got to show your vaccine card at entry. Oh. Yeah. Not you now, I'm saying like.
Yeah, I got mine right here. I got my first dose yesterday. So I'm literally about to pull it out of my purse. Oh no, it's in my car. But yeah, no, who knows, but we're just excited about the committee that we have right now. The K-12 committee is always great, but the committee that we have right now is made up of a group of people who are so committed to figuring out the best things for theater educators in Texas. And it is, our meetings are exhilarating. Like they're so fun. We get so much stuff done. It's wild, like how this group works together. And it's just such a bummer that we haven't been able to do more, together in person kind of stuff. We haven't been in the same room yet. But it is a great group that represents each of their sections so well. I'm so grateful for them. And so, yeah, it's just, obviously, a lot has changed for TXETA.
Yeah.
The name being the first thing, like it's a time where if you aren't taking this time to kind of reevaluate everything you've held, your whole life,
Yeah.
you're kind of wasting it, I
Yeah.
think. And so I think everyone's doing that personally and, as an organization. And so it's cool to be a part of that and to hear those conversations, and to be in those conversations. And I don't know exactly what the future looks like.
Right.
I think it's a big question mark in a lot of ways. But I do know that there's a big commitment to moving, like you said, moving forward, moving up, and being more in tune to the needs of our educators, not just in a classroom, but on every level.
Yeah.
So, looking at ways that we can encourage and promote and celebrate inclusivity and diversity and that kind of thing. That's a big sticking point for the organization right now. It's a huge and advocacy. How can we advocate for the needs, on a government level, and what can we do as a nonprofit, and those are all big questions that are being asked all the time.
Yeah.
And I'm grateful that we're asking the questions and not just saying, well, it'll get done.
Yeah.
It'll be
Putting
fine.
it on a list. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I told Missy this a couple days ago that the benefit for maybe someone like you and someone like me, I've been doing now exhibits or vendors or whatever
Right.
Doc Ivans calls it, the people that shill stuff. I've been doing that now. This is my 4th year to do it, and my role has evolved with it. But the thing that I thoroughly enjoyed this year was I got to do my job while also attending workshops.
Oh my word, yes.
So, I tell Doc this every year, like, I just want somebody to sit here for an hour when I want to go off and go to whatever workshop it might be.
Absolutely.
And this year I was able to do that. So
yeah, I was the registrar for Theater Fest for 5-6 years. I can't even remember now. A long time.
Yeah.
And then this year worked with programming, which was a blast. But now, because of my position on the board and like the time commitments of that, I'm not doing either of those things.
Yeah.
Like, what am I going to do with all this time?
Yeah,
How am I going
right. So it's
actually go to workshops?
Yeah. The only tease was we had those online happy hours, and I will say this. I don't remember who said this, but I also know that I've heard this as a wrestling fan. I hear this from like old school wrestlers, is that the best education is at the bar. And because you get the liquid courage in you, and some people just start opening up and saying things, but B, you're sitting with people that you, in a workshop, it would be absolutely rude and horrendous for you to sit there and talk with your partner while the workshop is happening. So what always happens is you go to dinner or, happy hour or something, and chat with almost whoever's around you. It doesn't even need to be a friend.
Yeah.
And that's part of what I absolutely miss and adore about TXETA. So as an educator, I went as a student too, because HSPVA always went to TXETA. We never went to Thespian Festival. We always went to TXETA. And so there are elements of, I look at that festival as my festival more than I look at Thespians.
We never did Thespians either.
Yeah.
So Thespians coming to, and we didn't do it in Waco either. And so coming to JV and getting I was like, oh my gosh, I'm so lost.
Right.
I'm so lost. But
you
get it. You pick up on it quick.
So I want to get you out of here on a I wrote down a few things that I wanted you to talk about, and we're down to the last thing. And the last thing that I wanted to ask you about, because you mentioned, and I believe in this because I've had this happen and might still be having this happen, I don't know, but you mentioned about you weren't taking care of yourself at Waco, and sometimes you don't realize you're not doing that until you wake up Sunday morning and realize, oh my gosh, yesterday was a hell of a day, because you're so into it and you love doing what you're doing. So give some sort of, I don't know if advice is the right word, but maybe words of encouragement, because there are people out there, especially right now, especially this year, that I don't know if burnout is necessarily the right word, but there are people that aren't necessarily doing what's best for them selfishly, because they might feel that way. They might feel that it's selfish and we're here for the kids and this and that. But my superintendent always says, and I interviewed him yesterday, and that'll come out at some point once legal takes care of it, maybe. But but he's a big proponent of, if your glass is empty, you have nothing to pour out. You have nothing to give.
Absolutely.
So, what is something that you've maybe learned over the past few years, the past decade of being an educator that has led you to where you are now, with being more comfortable with your time and your working the whole working smarter, not harder? What is something you would kind of throw out there, recommend to teachers that might be kind of feeling that drought?
Yeah, I could talk about this for hours. So narrowing it
Well,
down
I
is
got
more
time.
difficult than figuring out. So there were a few things that helped me really. I mean, once you come to the realization, which you have to come to the realization on your own, and you have to make the decision that it's time to change something on your own, because you can have people tell you that for years and years, like I did, my parents, my family, all those things. But until I said enough is enough, I wasn't going to change anything. Then there were a few things that really helped me. And the first was realizing that I did not have to find my identity in being a theater educator, or in being someone who advances in one night play, or in someone who wins Tommy Tunes awards or anything like that. Like, my identity does not have to be focused there. My identity, if I'm talking just as a theater educator, can be in how I contribute to other educators. It can be in what I bring to the table for my students. And it doesn't have to be in awards and advancements and how many like, I will never be someone who does 8 shows a year. It's not going to happen. Like, I'm not going to be that person. And realizing that was okay was a huge part of being able to take a step back. The other thing was just kind of some self-awareness as a whole. If you've talked with me for any amount of time, you've probably heard me mention the Enneagram. I love it. And that may not be may not be your thing. Like, there's something else out there, but some kind of something that gives you some insight into who you are and how to best take care of you specifically is so important. Because for some people, taking care of themselves is going to look like what I did this morning, which is going and getting a facial. I'm going to get a pedicure here in just a little bit. Like, and those are cliche, but they actually are legitimately good self-care things for me. For other people, it's sitting and having an uninterrupted hour of reading. For some people, it's taking a walk. I mean, that most of us should probably be taking more walks, but figuring out what your version of taking care of yourself looks like is key. And knowing the difference between self-nurturing and self-care. So self-care might look more like pampering. It might look like getting your nails done and getting a facial and getting a massage, whereas self-nurturing looks like getting off the couch and meal prepping for the week, because you know that you're not going to have time, and otherwise you're going to end up driving through Whataburger again, and that is a problem because eventually that's going to catch up to you. Self-nurturing is making sure that your laundry is done for the week. Like, what are those things that you can do that make it easier for you to exist in the week to come, in the day to come, anything like that. And so even if you are in a busy time, understanding that you have to give yourself some time to nurture and care for yourself, because you need both of those things. I need the pampering and I need the meal prepping to some extent.
Right.
And so that was a big aspect of that. But just understanding that my whole life didn't have to be tied up in being a theater educator, and that didn't make me a worse educator. It made me a more balanced, smarter, and frankly, a better director, a better teacher. Was shocking to me. It was really eye-opening. Yeah. And so it can be done. Balance can be achieved. I think I've done a decent job of it. I still have my weeks that are just sheer madness and total stress, because that's that's directing a show. That's being involved in a show. But my stress level overall is at such a healthier level than it used to be.
Minor